Well, hey everybody, how's it going? I was just having a really cool chat with real estate rock star Elizabeth Kelly about something that is really quite interesting in terms of a lot of flippers running into some challenges with the shifting market. And so, it's one of those things where it seems all well and good to buy a distressed property, get some B lending, but then the whole business model is predicated on you adding enough value. And one thing that she's been noticing, and I've actually heard a few stories about this too and noticed it in some of our clients, is well, what happens if you don't get the refinance appraisal amount? What do you do? What do you do? And so instead of sticking your head in the sand and panicking, Elizabeth was chatting about a few things that answer that question. So I was like, wait, hold on. Let's stop and push record on this conversation because this is great information to share with people.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's absolutely my pleasure. I mean, it's every real estate conversation we have just leads into such awesome and amazing places. So, this private lending and what to do about refinancing and flipping question, really, really fascinating stuff. So, if we want to get into that, the scenario that we were playing with is people who are into house flipping, into BRRRR strategies, into refinancing. And you buy it, you renovate it, you have the best intentions, and then the appraisal out the back end or the sale price out the back end doesn't hit where you need it to hit. So you get these
hmm
BRRRR people who are just in panic mode, they're stuck, they've got really expensive debt. What are you seeing and what are you watching people do and advising them to do?
Well, that's a great question, and there's actually multiple parts here. So if you're okay, I'm just going to back up for one
Please
second.
do, yeah.
So the people that I'm seeing right now who are in greatest stress, who are having the greatest challenges, and if this is you, this is not a judgment at all. There's a ton of people out there who are having a hard time. So take heart that this is something that a lot of investors experience during a downturn. But basically, any strategy, whether it's land development, whether it's the BRRRR, whether it's flipping, all these strategies, as you said, James, are predicated on the end value. So what's happening right now in Ontario is there's a lot of people who the appraisers are getting more and more and more conservative. And
Hmm.
of course, there's less and less activity on the market to be able to base comparables on. So we're just seeing a lot of people who, they borrowed money, if they're doing some people are doing 100% loan to value, which I would never
Wow.
recommend in this particular market. But um, they're 100% loan to value, or they've got their down payment and closing costs in, but they've borrowed all the renovation money. They refinance at the end and they're short. And this isn't, we're not talking, short money at, 3 or 4%. Some of these people have borrowed money at 15%.
Yeah,
And
that's wild.
there's some investors I'm seeing who actually have multiple projects on the go right now. And when the market was going up, they were able to churn their money and pull it out and put it into the next one and be able to keep going. The challenge is a lot of people going right back to the fundamentals, they assume every strategy will work in every market and in every market condition or the cycle where you are in the market cycle.
Hmm.
So the challenge is if you don't have a plan B, if you haven't taken into account what's going to happen if you don't get what you need to get on your after repair value, then you could end up with a lot of cash locked in at a very expensive rate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about taking on high leverage and taking on expensive debt is you have to respect it because you're talking 15% money. My gosh, if your profit margin on a flip or on a burr is, 60, 70, 80,000 bucks, well, you could be paying 10, $15,000 per month. And if it if something doesn't go according to plan, things take a little bit long, your entire profit margin could evaporate with that expensive interest. So it's a really good caution, especially in a softening market, to, maybe throttle back a little bit, not take on as expensive a debt or not over leverage yourself. I mean, that's such an important piece of advice. And in a rapidly increasing market, it's easy to look like a real estate genius because you can make risky moves and the market will just kind of rise along and erase any mistakes or mitigate any major risks you take. But when the market shifts in the cycle that we're in, you're absolutely right. You have to be a little bit more cautious and have a little bit more perspective. So to circle back to our initial kind of comment and question is, what the heck are people doing who are stuck in this situation?
Well, there's different things that people can do depending on what, their personal situation is. And so I don't want to give like blanket
Of
advice and say,
course,
hey,
yeah.
everybody should do this because it's important to have a really good handle on your portfolio, your risk tolerance, all these other factors. So you can do some creative financing. So maybe you could do, if you can't sell your flip property and you could do a rent to own, generate
Yeah.
higher cash flow, which will help offset, the money that you've had to leave in and potentially the higher monthly payments. Um, you can do some of the strategies where you're trying to do value adds. Maybe there's an opportunity, if you did a BRRR on a multi-unit, for example, are there relatively low cost things we can do to boost income? Like, is there a way we can put storage lockers in? 4 storage lockers generate $400 a month. Again, that helps to offset. In general, most of the investors I see who are in trouble,
Yeah.
it's potentially because they're doing multiple deals at once. And so they aren't in this situation just with one property, they're in this situation with multiple
Wow.
properties. So sometimes it's a matter of looking at the numbers and saying, hey, could I bring in a joint venture partner to, do a refinance? Maybe I'm getting A rates at this point, and then that will enable me to kind of pay back some of it. If my JV partner's coming in with cash, I can pay out the private. I can get an A rate,
Right.
the lower interest rate for an A mortgage, and then go from there. Um, the solutions really kind of depend on what the rest of the portfolio is doing too. A lot of investors can withstand one property or two properties that are negative cash flowing if they have enough cash flow from the rest of their portfolio. But
Right.
most investors I talk to right now, they're trying to leave their job. So if you're in a situation where you're negative cash flowing, you're almost having to get like another job, get a job at Starbucks to cover your negative cash flow on your portfolio. That's not what we want to do at all.
Right.
So sometimes you might be in a situation where you might have to sell for less, and it's literally a matter of cutting your losses. The analogy I always use is how do you like to take your band-aids off? James, are you a person who rips it off or are you a person who takes it off really slowly?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's important. I agree. When the market turned back in 2015 and 2016 in Alberta, when oil just tanked, we did a couple of slow band-aids on a couple of properties that started to underperform. And if I had to do it all over again, it would have been quick band-aids all around.
Yeah. And that's the situation that people have to, that's where their personal situation comes in, because if you have the cash flow from other places, then you can potentially get by till it gets to a point where the interest rates come down, the valuations start going back up again, couple of years, and properties that are underwater should be starting to turn around. But if you don't have the means to fund that, then you've put yourself in a situation where you're in a cash flow crisis. And at that point, you really do need to rip the band-aid off. So, you might lose. And I mean, I've seen flippers with much skinnier margins in this market. Like, I've seen people 30 and 40,000 is all they're doing a flip for.
Wow.
And I'm like, that is a lot of work for a potential for 30 or 40. So they don't
Yeah.
even have big margins to cushion them to sell at a discount.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, 15% interest, your margins can disappear really quick. So, you know,
Absolutely.
Elizabeth, it's good to have a cautionary tale. If anybody who's watching is already in that situation, I'm going to have to echo Elizabeth's comment of it often pays to rip the band-aid off quick because the slow band-aid rip is just months and months and months of negative cash flow where you're just shuffling money around to try to make that negative cash flow amount every month. So, it's
Yeah.
the thing about a portfolio is you win some, you lose some, and if you know you're taking a loss, it's always better to take a fast loss than a slow loss. And then that opens up your bandwidth, opens up your capacity, and then you can move on to another project to make more money with that one.
Absolutely. And I really, if I talk to people and they're like, oh, I've never lost money in real estate, I'm like, that I don't know any really successful investors who have made money in every single deal. I really don't. Myself included. I mean, I've lost money. Before I knew that you had to match the strategy to the market, I was doing rent to owns in New Brunswick and there wasn't enough appreciation to support the after repair value. So they didn't turn out like I thought they would. I've had other situations where, I bought in Alberta. I was doing rent to owns in Alberta in 2014, 2015. The market turned and I had to sell for less than we anticipated. So we didn't lose money on that one, but we didn't make what we had projected that we would make. So sometimes your biggest learning curve comes from the times where you lost money because you're like, I never want this to happen again. I am going to
Absolutely.
dissect this and figure out what I need to do, what systems and processes I need to put in place so that this does not ever happen to me ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Well, Elizabeth, thanks for just coming on and providing some perspective. I mean, I think a lot of people they cling on to a deal that isn't working way tighter than they need to. And just
Mhm.
the advice of if it's not working, let it go. That's really, really good advice for people to hear. And the way that I say it is it's kind of like a sports season. If you're playing hockey, it's an 82 game season. No hockey team wins all 82 games on the way to the Stanley Cup. You take a few losses on the way to winning a championship. And if you take that mindset to your portfolio, you'll grow a lot faster than trying to cling to every single one. So, Elizabeth, thanks you again so much. And I've tagged Elizabeth in the post. She's actually an amazing real estate coach. So, do you want to learn how to avoid some of these terrible situations? Slide into her DMs and chat her up about it because she's very, very wise. And again, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you again.